thank you very much for coming into us.
Thank you.
You are a super junior minister, you sit at Cabinet. How are you finding that?
Really enjoying it. It's been a real step change over the last 2 months. Spent a lot of time in August reading myself into my brief and meeting a lot of the important stakeholders in my area of responsibility, particularly those who are active in the business community, representative organisations, individual businesses, and people on the trade union side as well, who obviously have a keen interest in what I'm doing around collective bargaining, the Low Pay Commission in particular.
Was it a surprise to be promoted?
I was pleasantly surprised. I was, like a lot of backbench TDs, hopeful that I might receive a call from the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach to be appointed to some position. But it was a pleasant surprise when I got the phone call from the Taoiseach on the morning of Friday, the 11th of July, expressing a wish to see me later that morning and to offer me a position at Cabinet. So yeah, very pleasantly surprised, and it's a really interesting position. It's a position I can really get my teeth stuck into, and there's a lot of meat in the position. I mean, from the business point of view, working closely with business organisations at the moment and with officials in my own department around the area of finance for growth, ensuring that appropriate finance gets to viable companies and new companies to make sure that we can create the jobs that we all want to create, and also just on the employment side, supporting Minister Bruton and supporting the government's agenda on job creation. We're making some serious inroads. A lot to do yet, but we're getting there. We're making significant progress.
Just on that, on your portfolio, you talk about supporting Minister Bruton, but Minister Bruton has been very clear in talking about the need to do everything possible to promote job creation in this country. You have been talking constantly in the last few weeks about wage increases. Surely when unemployment is at over 11% still, the focus should not be on making sure people in work get more money, but people out of work get into employment, should it not?
Just to be clear on what I mean by that, we have had a succession of pay rises, albeit modest pay rises in certain sectors of the economy, particularly over the last 18 months, and indeed there are a couple of hundred pay agreements which have been secured under the auspices of the Labour Court, for example, in recent times, registered with my own department, which show that, particularly manufacturing and now to a greater degree in the services sector, that where companies' positions are improving, that pay claims are being made, and that those claims are being secured. People are securing pay increases in return for productivity. I think we're moving towards a more normalised bargaining process now at the moment as the economy improves. Nobody's saying that people who are working in struggling companies should be receiving pay increases that the company can't afford to provide. Nobody's saying that would be absolutely insane. But what I'm saying is, in the normal course of events, as the economy improves and as companies' fortunes improve, then pay awards will be made. Even the Governor of the Bank of England said last week to the TUC in the UK, the equivalent of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions in the UK, that there was a strong argument for wage rises in the economy in order to stimulate the economy in the UK.
So are you talking about increasing the minimum wage then?
It's very early for me to say that the minimum wage should be increased.
Clearly you want it to be at some point as the recovery.
As the recovery takes hold, there will be very strong argument for doing that. The reason why we're setting up the Low Pay Commission is to make sure that we take the politics out of setting the minimum wage. As it stands at the moment, I could walk into the Dáil chamber this evening under the National Minimum Wage Act 2000 and announce that I'm going to increase the national minimum wage without any evidence to say that that's a good thing to do for anybody, or without any evidence to say that wouldn't affect competitiveness of businesses. What we want to do is take the politics out of that. We want an evidence-based way to reach an appropriate minimum wage rate on an annual basis. So how the Low Pay Commission will work will be quite interesting, because we're looking at the moment at how similar models work elsewhere, particularly looking at the UK. And what the UK did in 1997 was set up a commission, 3 representatives of the business community, 3 representatives of the trade union sector, and an independent chair to research what would be an appropriate level of a national minimum wage in any given year. It's worked really, really well in the UK, but what we want to do is extend it out a bit further. Yes, we'll set it up on a statutory basis. We'll be doing that we'll do that over the next couple of months, but in the interim we're working on the notion that we will be setting it up in the first instance on a non-statutory basis, on an administrative basis in the interim, to make sure that we're not not waiting for the legislation to be passed, but that a lot of the groundwork will be done, and then a report can be given to me when the Commission itself is formally set up in the next few months.
What if the Commission says we should cut the minimum wage because the minimum wage in this country is too much? Would that be, that's surely not a proposal the government to implement? So I mean, what I'm saying is that ultimately the Low Pay Commission is always going to recommend an increase in the minimum wage, is it not? Would you accept that?
Not always.
But you won't cut it if you're in government, will you?
Well, put it like this, all of the recommendations that were made to the various ministers in the UK who were charged with accepting the reports from the Low Pay Commission, they accepted them all. Clearly, in the United Kingdom, the Low Pay Commission was set up at a time of strong economic growth. But over the last period of time, the economy, of course, in the UK, in many ways flatlined. And there were small rises to the national minimum wage.
But it was always rising.
As I understand it to be the case, I think there were standstill points as well, and who knows over the course of the next few years what will happen. But in the context of where we're at the moment, I think there will be a strong argument for increasing the national minimum wage for a whole range of different reasons. But I'm not going to preempt that, because what I want to do is fulfil the government's mandate and fulfil the commitment made by the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach on the 11th of July that we would set up a Low Pay Commission on an independent statutory basis, and it would be allowed to do its work independently of government and report to me on an annual basis. It's too early to say whether the national minimum wage will be increased or not. I'll be awaiting the report of the Low Pay Commission, in fairness to allow it to do its work.
When do you expect?
I've had a little bit of a chuckle over it, to be honest. I like Pat a lot. Pat's great company, and Pat's never short of things to say. There's no doubt about it. And I think in many ways Pat will be missed at Cabinet. He missed at that senior level in the party. I don't think Pat was necessarily having a swipe at me individually, or indeed the individuals who were appointed. Certainly not me anyway. I think Pat knows it's not necessarily my nature to go seeking preferment from anybody. I worked hard the last 3 years, and ahead of that 11, 12 years previously at a local authority, worked in various positions with the party as well over the years. And the
Taoiseach, right, isn't he? I mean, what do you know about working in it all after 3 years that could make you a cabinet minister?
It's always a judgment call, I think, for the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach to make in terms of who they appoint. And we've had situations in the past where individuals have been appointed to cabinet the very first day in the Dáil. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be in favour of that sort of approach, and in many cases that didn't end well. We've got a very clear agenda. I think the Labour Party team now at cabinet level and across the junior ministerial ranks is probably much more reflective of the make-up of society, and as well kind of represents.
Do you think that was
represents as well, more so I think people who are in the 30s and 40s who've travelled that kind of journey over the last few years in terms of the debt burden, in terms of mortgage issues, in terms of pay cuts, and in terms of people losing their jobs.
Do you think then that was a mistake to appoint a cabinet made up of ex-ministers and very experienced politicians in 2011 by Eamon Gilmore?
Absolutely not, and I think that decision has been proven to be correct. I remember having a conversation with Eamon Gilmore the night that particular cabinet was appointed, and he asked me for my view on it, and I said, I think you're 100% right. We need at this stage, where there's an existential threat about this country's very existence, we need the most experienced people with the hand on the tiller, and people like Pat Rabbitte, Rory Quinn, Eamon Gilmore, they'd nothing necessarily to prove to anybody, but they have proved though that they could actually take this country from the brink of falling off a cliff to a position now where it's not just survival is guaranteed, but that we're in a situation now where we can start to talk about giving something back to hard-working families and people who've really suffered over the last period of time. So I think all the evidence is there to show that they did a really good job in terms of stabilising this country.
Talking of Eamon Gilmore, do you regret signing the motion of no confidence in him, given what transpired?
It's a really difficult thing to do, and ultimately Eamon made his own decision about what he was going to do. I think in the context of the time that we were in, people were very annoyed about the local election result and the European election result. I think we needed change. It turned out that Eamon happened to be thinking the same way himself.
Why didn't you talk to him then before you stabbed him in the back?
Well, I don't think anybody stabbed anybody in the back, in fairness. What I did, in fact, the day after we had that internal discussion amongst a few of us, is go directly to Eamon and have a discussion with him about my own views on the matter, about how we got to that situation, and details of that conversation, actually a very positive conversation, will remain private. But I will say this about Eamon Gilmore. I would have understood if Eamon had turned around and said, I'm not even meeting you, I don't want to discuss this with you. But it's the mark of the man that he did. No, I think Eamon knew it was the time to go. I think he was quite entitled to lead the party contesting that election just back in May. He was our leader since 2007. In terms of the job that Eamon did, stabilising the country, promoting Ireland abroad and rebuilding our reputation, I think not just history will be very kind to him, but I think commentators are beginning, to understand as well the broader context of the work that Eamon did. There's no doubt that some of the decisions that this party had to take in government over the last period of time certainly damaged the party in the eyes of the electorate, and we took a serious hit in the local and European elections. But I'm sensing a new optimism around the party at the moment, and I think a sense that people are prepared to listen again to what it is we have to say, appreciating some of the things and understanding some of the things that we had to do. If you look at the Sunday Business Post poll last week, 61% of people think that the economy is moving in the right direction, and a similar number of people are of the view that the difficult choices that had to be made over the last couple of years were necessary to bring the country to a situation where it's stable once again.
Just on the abortion issue, would Labour, reinvigorated by the election of John Burton as leader, would it not be brave and call for a referendum on the repeal of the 8th Amendment? It's clearly what the party wants. There's growing public support for it. There's obviously a lot of issues surrounding the Protection of Life-Changing Pregnancy Act and the Miss Y case. So why isn't Labour brave enough to say we should have a referendum on this and we should have it as soon as possible?
Well, what we don't know is all the details of the Y case, and I think we're all waiting anxiously for that report, because I think that will show us much more clearly what actually happened, what the context was. So I wouldn't like to say any more about that in this case, but in terms of the repeal of the 8th, my own view is that I think this should form a central part of our offering to the Irish people the next election. We don't have a mandate to go any further at this stage. It proved to be extremely difficult, not from the Labour Party's point of view, but in terms of issues that our government partners had around the X-case legislation, as it were, to get that to a point where we could legislate after 20 years. Post that particular judgment. So I don't necessarily accept that we have a mandate to go any further, but I think we have to have that discussion with the public, and I think the way to do that is between now and the next general election. And personally, I would be in favour of having that campaign and having that discussion. I think we have to. I think, broadly speaking, I think the society is ready for that discussion.
Yeah. Just a couple of other things. Gerry Adams, constituency colleague of yours, does it bother you that he came down from the north and topped the poll in Louth in 2011?
No, he's quite entitled to. Anybody is entitled to put their name on the ballot paper.
In the past, you've had a go at his economic illiteracy. I mean, you've been quite critical of Sinn Féin, obviously. I mean, you'd be expected to do that, but I mean, is there something that really bothers you about Gerry Adams particularly? No,
I think we have a decent enough relationship as constituency colleagues. Don't see an awful lot of him necessarily in Louth, certainly around the Drogheda area, but and people do remark on the fact that we don't see an awful lot of him, and that's fine. He's not from the constituency, but he represents it and has a mandate. That's the important thing. He has a mandate to represent the people of Louth, and that's accepted and understood. I've made the point before, that I think not just Gerry Adams, but Sinn Féin in general, with a few exceptions, are essentially economically illiterate, and I think the policies that they put forward would end up driving us back into the arms of the Troika, as the Taoiseach just said just a couple of days ago. I think if you do the sums, they don't add up. They seem to be all things to all people, and they seem to find it very difficult to manage the Northern Ireland administration, and if they find it difficult to manage that, I wouldn't have much confidence that they could manage the affairs of this republic. I don't think that anybody in the Labour Party would be drawn on what our options are after the next election. Our job is just to fulfil the programme that we have at the moment, and then make sure that we've got a very positive offering for the Irish people the next election. I think the political system is still in quite a state of flux. I don't think it's settled down post the 2011 election. I think there'll be very significant movement in polls between now and the expected election in March or April of 2016. It would be unwise, I think, of anybody to rule anything in or out at this stage, other than, I will say this, the Labour Party will stand on an independent platform. I think we are best when we stand on an independent platform. I think the 2007 Mullingar Accord, for example, with Fine Gael was a big mistake, and in retrospect that shouldn't have been done, and I wouldn't be in favour, certainly this far out, but aligning ourselves with anybody.
Okay. What's the coolest thing about being in Cabinet?
The coolest thing about being in Cabinet, that's a very good question. You really are at the centre of decision making, so while politicians sometimes are inclined to use excuses about the fact that they didn't know a certain decision was being made, I don't have that excuse, and actually I have the pleasure of being involved in that decision making process, so it's really cool to be at the heart of decision making.
Ged Nash, thanks very much.